Hi, it's been a while since I made a video. I've been feeling anxious and not that interesting. Flat. I'm now based in the East Bay. I haven't been traveling with Boy for a while, but I got to see some friends of mine and reconnect and spend some good time with them. I also failed to do some of the things that I really wanted to do because of my anxiety. But on some positive note, I did hijack a friend's trip to Hawaii, and I got to spend time with three of them. The trip was really chill, and I got to know them a little bit better. I don't know these friends very closely, but I got to know them a little bit better. Most of the time we spent it on beaches, basking in the sun. I spent it mostly on the beach, not getting into the water because I don't know how to swim. It's something embarrassing to admit, especially when I'm traveling to Hawaii, where most of the activities to do are water activities. I did manage to do snorkeling in Hawaii. I did wear a floating belt and a floating snake thing. I don't know what it's called. Tube. But most of the days they would be in the water and I would be on the beach just basking in the sun, which it's something I enjoyed. I really found it relaxing, and it got me, actually, I wrote some of the script for this video on the beach. On the last day of Hawaii, I did actually go into the water for like a bit. It was scary, and it's because the ocean was like just pulling me in, and the sand would just like slide from under your feet, so it just like drag you in and you get deeper into the water. So I just like kept fighting to get back away from like the deep water. But yeah, one day I will learn how to swim, or I should watch a lot more YouTube videos about it. Anyhow, today I wanted to talk about my experience with therapy. I started therapy around August 2018, and I mentioned this before. It was around when I was really unproductive at work. I would sit at my desk and I would like literally freeze looking at the screen, and I start crying on my desk. So that's when I started therapy. The problem with therapy in the US is it's really inaccessible to a lot of people, and they make it really hard to find a provider, to bill the provider, to pay for the provider through the insurance. Most providers don't take insurance directly, so you would have to get the bill and submit a claim, and you have to figure out how to submit a claim. The first provider that I was with, Aetna insurance provider, didn't have any online ability to submit a claim, so you'd have to mail it or fax it, believe it or not, in order to submit the claim. Luckily, the internet is amazing, and there was a tool called DocuHub that had a feature for sending faxes online. So I basically used that to fax my claims to the provider and get my kind of the payment back, their check. They would send me a check. Later, I switched to another provider, and the other provider had an online tool to submit claims, so that was a little bit easier, although they paid a little bit less from my claims, and figuring out how much they're going to pay and what codes to use when you submit claims is impossible. So I don't know. The type of therapy that I did was behavioral and talk therapy, where the focus is mainly you sharing and talking and exploring your childhood and different triggers for you as an adult, and kind of find connections between your upbringing and why these triggers exist and why they trigger you. To summarize, what I got from therapy was validation to my feelings, and just that connection with population that I don't know, indirect connection of people who are going through something similar, just to make me feel less alone, less unique in this experience. This is connection I would feel through the stories that my therapist would tell me about her patients, as well as finding a language to be able to describe and talk about my feelings. There's something magical about talking about things. It kind of helps you release a lot of fogginess, a lot of cloudiness in your brain. I would cry a lot in my sessions as I describe like the hopelessness that I feel about getting any better soon. I mentioned one thing about therapy is that you get to see the connections between your triggers and responses to these triggers as an adult, and your upbringing and the events that happen through your childhood. Some of these connections are so obvious in hindsight, but naming it and actually processing it is what makes it useful. To acknowledge how events shaped our current self and to start unlearning some of these negative patterns and process and learn new positive ones. One example of the struggles that I had when I moved to the US is the loss of community and family. This is especially hard because, as my therapist points out, I grew up in a big family that is social and interconnected. Moving to the US went to zero. This explained my constant and kind of persistent need to create a community around me and how it was a priority for me. Making that connection and acknowledging it felt liberating and allowed me to feel validated about my pursuit and where it comes from, allowing me to appreciate my friends a lot more than I used to. Another connection I made in my early childhood is the rebellious child in me, the one that refuses to fit into a mold society wants to put us in. This translated as simple expression of myself through clothing, fashion, music, haircuts, and so on. Things that are frowned upon and punished by my teachers, family, and the community. This kind of connected to my exploration of the alternative relationship structures or lack of that I appreciated and leaned toward as an adult, as well as my rebellion against work, hustle culture, and the unlimited growth. Another connection I made is how we compare ourselves to others. A lot of people will relate to this and how this would put us down and make us feel less than or late for a milestone that other people have reached. This was rooted in my childhood where mom would compare us to my cousins, for example, constantly. I remember this instance where my mom was screaming because I was really bad at kind of using tools and being handy, where my cousins were really good at it. And so she would compare me to them, even though I was really good at other stuff that my cousins weren't good at. This pattern continued as an adult, where I would compare myself to the people around me and my friends that have progressed in their careers a lot faster than I am, even younger ones. It triggered a lot of shame, embarrassment, and made me feel that I'm late, and it made me miserable. I did get over some of this eventually. One of the tools that helped me to process this is to acknowledge that everybody is on a different path and that everybody had a different upbringing, different parents, different circumstances that they grew up with and that shaped their adulthood. This is something I keep repeating to myself whenever I feel like I'm comparing, whenever I fall into that pattern. I repeat, everybody's on a different path. Everybody's on a different path. One other connection I made from my childhood is how I was punished for talking or arguing or not being quiet, and how that shaped my adulthood, not being able to argue about things and the avoidant pattern in me. Whenever there's a conflict, I would just pull back and I would avoid that conversation. It's not all negative. There are some positives that I really like and I made that connection to. One being the acts of service as a love language, where I grew up in a family where my mom act of service was to cook us food, or delicious food all the time, and feed us. And I learned to appreciate that, especially as an adult. It became one of the love languages that I give to my partners and friends, where I cook for them and take care of them. It brings me a lot of joy to cook or feed a friend or a partner. The other positive thing that I think about is how I grew up in a family that I really appreciated art, music, and dance as an expression. We had a lot of birthday parties growing up where we'd invite all of my family, my extended family, and we'd just listen to music and dance and eat delicious food. This pattern, I feel ingrained in me, my love for music, my love for dance, and it's apparent in my love for belly dancing and excellence at belly dancing. Okay, now one of my favorite exercises that I did in therapy was naming my different personalities around my depression. Naming Micah as the depressed one and naming Muhammad as the cool, active social guy. This came within the context of how hard it became for me to take care of myself. I would cook for others, I would shower whenever I'm seeing someone, but it would take me weeks, for example, to shower, and I would not be able to cook for myself. Naming these personalities and treating them as separate entities allowed me to see how angry and mean Muhammad was to Micah, how I treated him as unwanted and unwelcomed, how I blamed him for everything that is happening, for us being stuck at home, for us being depressed. I would notice how Muhammad would talk to Micah, how I would tell him that it's his fault that we're depressed, that it's his fault we're crying all the time, that it was his fault that we're isolated at home. This allowed Muhammad to see that he is being mean. He is being mean to himself and to Micah as well, allowing him to be nicer and acknowledge the pain that he's causing Micah. The idea was to get myself to care for myself through caring for my other self, if that makes sense. And it worked wonderfully. Muhammad would talk loudly to Micah whenever he cooks. Whenever Muhammad is around, he would be able to cook and prepare meals for a week. And so he would talk to Micah and would tell him, hey, whenever you're around, I made a few meals, it's in the fridge, and please feel free to eat whenever you're hungry. And whenever Micah is around and he's unable to cook for himself and tired, and he would find the food that Muhammad cooked for him, he would talk to him loudly and tell him, thank you so much for making the food, it's delicious. It definitely allowed me to take care of myself a little better. And if you're struggling with taking care of yourself, try this exercise. It might help you, and I hope it helps you overcome that. Okay, on another topic, I usually like to talk about what I have been working on. And I mentioned before Repeat Routine, the app that I created for building routines in your life. I have been working on something different. I have been working on an app to allow you annotate PDFs and fill forms in PDFs and sign PDFs for free. And so I deployed it to an annotator, to pdfannotator.repeat.day. I'll share the link in the description below, but check it out. I have really enjoyed building it, and I'm still building it some more. It's a lot of fun, and I get a lot of satisfaction from creating and making these tools, even if no one uses them. The other thing that I've been working on is to find a job. Yeah, I have been unemployed for the past few months, which has been really nice, but I need to get a job. The job that I thought I had in the bag with GitLab kind of fell through because they restructured the team and the role got scrapped. And so now I'm interviewing again and applying to other jobs. I have two conversations today with 2 recruiters, so I'm hoping that I would have a job within a month. Yeah, wish me luck. Until then, bye.